Mhm. Take it
Good,
away, Nancy.
good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Dory. Thank you, Janelle. And wow, that's just like the best news ever to know that Tim and his team are on their way home. So I am so grateful to get to interview these ladies today. And you know what? We cannot deny the importance of this topic of mental health. We know it's important. And it's so amazing that here is our mission statement for the Y, that we seek to put Christian principles into action, into practice through programs that build healthy spirit, mind, and body. But oftentimes we really don't know what that looks like. And so the Y seeks to grow in these areas of mental health and spiritual health. But today we just want to learn a little more about what that looks like in our YMCAs today. So that's what we're going to talk about. And I welcome Pamela and Sarah and Janelle here. And I would like for you guys to just start by just giving us a brief introduction of who you are. And also, I would love if you could just give your own definition of mental health, mental well being, so that we can just kind of get to know where you're coming from. So, Janelle, would you like to start?
Absolutely. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I work as the association mission director at the YMCA of Pierce and Kitsap County, which you can tell is in Tacoma, Washington. And I am actually a licensed therapist in the past and a bachelor in social work, and did a lot in the counties doing lots of work with families and child protective services and etc. before I got to the Y. So this is dear to my heart because I believe strongly, just like Luther Gulick did, and he's the guy that created the triangle, the red triangle, spirit, mind, body. They are very integrated for me. And my definition really for mental health is, I mean, I just understand it to be like everyone has it, right? It's not, it's different than mental illness. And sometimes those get kind of mixed together in some people's minds. Mental health is just like I have physical health, I have mental health. So it's my emotions, it's my psychological state, it's my social well-being, and you always have it since the day you're born, right? And until you die, and it's just part of who we are. And people with mental illness are diagnosed with some condition that is impairing their functioning in life, you know, socially or emotionally, some kind of stress, and they're diagnosed with a disease per se. So that's different. And you know what's interesting? People that have mental illness also have mental health, and they can do things for their mental health that actually help them cope with their mental illness. Just like if you have a physical problem, you know, some health problem, you learn to figure out how to take care of your body, even though it has this thing. So I find that fascinating. So that's probably more than you wanted, but how about
I
Sarah or
love
Pamela?
that. Everyone has mental health. So good, Janelle. How about you, Pamela?
Greetings, all. My name is Pamela Hempstead. I am a Christian, an author, a licensed therapist, a gentle warrior, and a friend. And I am the Association Director of Mental Health at the YMCA of Greater Charlotte, and I'm excited to be here today with you all. I really like the definition that the World Health Organization uses to define mental health, and they say that it is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. It truly is an amalgamation of mind, body, and spirit, which is what we all are.
Pamela, that's so good. Thank you. How about you, Sarah? Tell us a little bit about yourself and then your definition.
Yeah, I'm Sarah Willitson, and I am currently, well, as far as the YMCA goes, I've been with the Y for 7 years now in a bunch of different capacities, and right now am really just focusing on personal training currently. But I just finished my graduate program and am pursuing licensure currently. So I'm definitely just a newbie in that sense, but I'm so grateful that we're all just sitting here talking about the importance of mental health. And I'd say my definition is just very simply how well we take care of ourselves emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. And I think that this involves just really being in tune with who you are, knowing ourselves really well,
Mm.
And it's just that self-awareness is such an important part of mental health. In addition to what these ladies already said.
Thank you, Sarah. That's awesome. So I want to go on to our next question, which is about stigmatization. And mental health struggles can often be stigmatized, right? So many people want to hide their struggles and they feel shame and all those things. And we know that mental health stigma is actually even in the workplace today. So I want to ask the question, how do you see mental health struggles stigmatized today? And I'm going to start with Sarah. Would you like to take a stab at that question?
Sure. Well, I think stigma, when you think of the word stigma, I think of, stereotypes. I think stigma mostly comes from lack of information, sometimes even fear of the unknown or what could possibly be. And so I think a lot of things influence that. Sometimes our experiences do. The media is a really big influencer of stigma. And so I think as far as just mental health goes, we watch movies, we hear stories, um we know what we hear, but sometimes, we are not so much up close and personal with things like mental illness or just even in understanding what mental health really is. So it's important to seek that out and understand it for yourself, understand what that means. I think as far as the why goes, challenging some of those mental health stigmas is really important. I know with Charlotte, Pam does just such a wonderful job of creating groups around like just some psychoeducation that I've been blessed to be a part of. And so doing things like that, connecting members and staff, like there's a lot of talk around staff with therapists and counseling. I would love, gosh, I'd love to see the Y have counselors in-house. That would be such a wonderful goal. So, but yeah, just making those connections.
Oh, that's awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much. Well, Pamela, we'd love to hear from you just a little more about what you're doing there and just how you see this.
Well, what I'm doing for Charlotte YMCA Association relates to destigmatizing mental health, educating on the concept, the topic of mental health, and then connecting to resources. So in 2020, I was a part-time staff member. I was a Group X coordinator, and I was blessed to come back in a full-time capacity under the leadership of Todd Tibbetts, and he was big on health equity, but we always struggled with defining what that meant, right? And there was a desire to do these three initiatives with regard to mental health. And so as I continued to massage that concept, I looked at how we could work inside the house with our staff first, because if we take this out to the community is going to come in and say, hey, what's this program that's related to mental health? And our staff is going to say, I don't know, but I need it too, right? So we heal the inside. And then as we move out to the community, when the community comes in and asks, staff can say, it's a wonderful program. I did it, and you're going to benefit greatly from it. When I think about stigma, I know there's a significant stigma in the Black community with regard to mental health. We don't talk outside of the house. We don't tell our business. And so the struggle then gets escalated when we think about the stigma related to church. There is this suggestion that you should be able to pray it away. But to that point, I would counter this. I was talking to my elder about this, one of my favorite elders the other day, and he had the perfect example. He said, if you trust that God is going to provide you your daily bread, you won't just sit at the kitchen table and pray for the bread to show up, right? Because faith without works is dead. You have to go out and earn the bread to bring it to your table and eat it. So with regard to mental health, if you break your leg, you'll pray and you'll go to the doctor. So if your mind is not working the way that you're accustomed to, you pray and you go to a mental health advocate. I think the church has done some damage, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit later with regard to stigma in the mental health realm. And I also think comparison is a significant damaging qualifier, because the media tells us what is perfect, what is attractive. And when we don't meet that particular quality, then we struggle with our own self. But Psalms 139 verses 13 and 14 say that God was present when we were knit in our mother's womb, and that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And so what that suggests to me is that I am who I am, shaped the way I am, with the hair texture and the skin color on purpose. Like, God wanted me to be the way that I am, and he wanted you all to be the way that you are. If he wanted us all to be the same color, he could have made that happen. And so you get to see me as a Black woman. You get to see me as a Christian Black woman. You get to see me as a woman, right? I am all of those things. And you get to see me as this woman who has a mental health that I am responsible for nurturing. And stigma comes into play when we don't acknowledge how awesome we are because of who made us. And then that comparison thing just kind of takes us down a rabbit hole that can go on and on and on. And then the enemy gets involved and it's a wrap.
Wow. So much said there, Pamela. I agree. And I really appreciate your words about comparison. That's so huge in our communities. I'd like to go on to the next question, which is about 3 words that you all know so much about: spirit, mind, and body. We're all familiar with that. But how can the spirit, mind, and body interact with each other in an integrated way? Like, where does the body what is the body's role in this conversation as well? And I'm going to ask Sarah to speak to that.
Gosh, so much. I feel like really with every life experience, your whole self is affected, your mind, your spirit, your body. And so when you're talking about mental health counseling, to incorporate all of those, that needs to be. There's something specific in the therapy world called somatic experiencing, and it's a type of therapy, but it also can be incorporated just in mental health or just in therapy, I think, in general, but just teaching techniques like mindfulness, the way we use our bodies to heal, like things like dance or art, incorporating our mind or other just body movements in that way. And I do want to suggest, and many of you may have heard of this book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Such a powerful book, a hard book. There's a lot of really hard stories in that, but just talking about how our bodies hold our trauma, and to work it out in different ways is just really important. Yeah, so take a look at that book if you
Yeah, some great books. So who else would like to speak about this? Janelle, go ahead.
Yeah, I would love a chance to talk a little bit about the integration of those 3. I totally agree, Sarah. I mean, we're learning more and more about how our body is carrying everything that we've ever experienced, and even sometimes from our other generations. But, I struggle a little bit. I've had a lot of groups through Journey to Freedom. We do those in the YMCA. We've done those for years. Literally thousands of people have gone through these little progress groups, and it is a spirit, mind, body experience. So we talk about all those 3 things, and it's so hard. And we'll talk more about this, I think, in November, but the spiritualizing that goes on is something that I try to avoid, kind of like Pamela was saying. Of course, you're going to pray, but you don't just throw a scripture at it and then you leave the person at the kitchen table, right? Like you help them find, a way forward in the real world while God is present and in that, right? I think about, and maybe this is jumping to another question, I can't remember, but, for me, it's a little bit what Pamela was saying. It's our identity comes with value and worthiness once you know that God loves you and created you and beautifully, wonderfully made, like Pamela said. Like this foundational, I think Brene Brown even talks about it as the wholehearted person. In other words, they know they have value just because they have value. I mean, it's not attached to things. And I think that message from the gospel and Jesus Christ and, in the Bible that God is pursuing you, he loves you, He
Mhm.
created you and you have purpose. Those things are foundational to mental wellness. My mental health is totally grounded in that, right? Like my worthiness and my purpose are tied up in my faith. And so that is a gift that I think spirituality and the Christian faith for sure gives, along with hope and perspective. I mean, I just think there's some real foundational things that help mental health that integrate. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so
I'd
much.
like to offer a little bit on that too, Nancy,
Yeah,
if you don't
but
mind.
I know I want to get to that question too about we can have Jesus and a therapist. I want you to talk about that as well as anything else, Pamela.
Absolutely. I wanted to touch on the connection between mental health, nutrition, and exercise.
Mhm.
So we at the Y, we have access to the very thing that would benefit us significantly. But if our equipment was relying on us, like, is there dust accumulating or does it get used, right? When I was Googling organizations to find out who has a me there, I found this list of organizations that have health and wellness packages, and all of them bragged about having a fitness facility on site. We have beautiful fitness facilities at every single branch, right? But we don't push those as an option for mental health. I have never worked out and regretted it, but I've always not worked out and regretted it. And with the body movement, you build a thing called self-efficacy. That's the pride and the ability to do a thing. And as you get older, now I know we've got some young folks on the call and we've got some seasoned folks on the call. I'm 55. And the older I get, the more I appreciate my body's ability to lift weights now, because that allows me to be able to sit down and stand up. You got to do that when you use the bathroom, when you get in the bed, to be able to bend over and pick up things, grocery bags, children, whatever, right? And so there are some very basic things that are necessary. And then nutrition is mind-blowing how impactful what we put into our body, how it looks in the mind. Ultra-processed foods. And there are statistics that suggest that over 60% of the foods that we eat in America are considered ultra-processed foods. And an example of an ultra-processed food is French fries. And that hurts my feelings. But studies show that the GI tract, or the gastrointestinal tract, is the second brain. And we all are familiar of the hormone serotonin and dopamine, right? Well, what blew my mind was to find out that 90% of serotonin is generated in the GI tract. 90%, and 50% of dopamine is generated in the GI tract. So what you eat directly impacts how you feel about life, which we don't really recognize that, and we don't walk in that. But the things that you put into your body and the way that you move your body or not can have a significant impact on your brain. I have a saying, I have t-shirts that say it, I have Jesus and a therapist. I'm a therapist and I have a therapist. I believe in Jesus and I have a therapist. And oftentimes people suggest that if you have a problem, a mental problem, that you pray it away. There's power in prayer. And yes, there is power in prayer. My therapist, on the first day that I saw him, and I was in a deep state of depression because I had lost my brother suddenly. And I was talking to him about how I came from a long line of strong women who I never saw cry. And I had just learned how to cry in 2020. And this emotion, this grief that I was experiencing was bigger than my ability to handle it. And he said, "What if I told you you could live in the land of and?" And I said, "What is that?" And he said, "You can be strong and you can cry." And that sounds like such a simple concept, but it was so amazingly freeing for me, because oftentimes we live in the land of only. I can only pray. I can only read the Bible. But you can pray and you can call a therapist, right? You can be multiple things at the same time. Today, I am exhausted And I am here with you all and excited about it, right? So allow yourself to live in the land of and, because there you have the freedom to allow the Lord to use you, and you have the ability to learn and grow.
Hmm. That is so good. I'm going to hold on to that thought. A land of and. So good. Well, we have time for just one more question. And I'd love for all of you to answer it just very briefly. But the question is, how is the Y uniquely positioned to promote mental health along with whole person wellness in our communities? How is it uniquely positioned in this season? Janelle, do you want to start?
I think Pamela already answered in a beautiful way, right? We have all this physical, facilities and pools and, big fields, and kids can play outside and go to camp. And I mean, it's a lot of physical, right? And it's social. There's a lot of connections that can be made. And that's a big part of mental wellness, is being connected, feeling like you belong somewhere, that you have some value, somebody knows your name. Like, those things are so huge. And loneliness is off the chart, if any of you have read recent statistics. And it's just unbelievable that there's this many people walking around and actually say, yeah, I'm severely lonely. And and that's just baseline mental health, is that you belong somewhere. So YMCA is already positioned. We just need to be more intentional and realize we're doing mental health work. Right?
And Janelle, do you see any barriers or threats to this happening in the Y?
Barriers or threats? Yeah, I think that sometimes we, at least even in my association, say, well, we're not really equipped to do mental health. Like, wait a minute, we're gonna open up that and we can't, do all that. And I love what Pamela is saying. We can destigmatize, we can find resources, we can, talk about it. We can, I think sometimes we don't realize what we already have. And we don't need to be scared. We need to partner.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
we're not going to do everything. We don't all have to
Yeah.
turn into a mental health center and have all
Mm.
these clinicians. Like, that's not necessarily what we all have to do.
Mhm.
Even though, Sarah, you would love to see mental health counselors in your Y, and some Ys do that, and that's fine. But I think we need to realize that's what people need and want. And the Y has been so good throughout its whole history of responding to the needs of the community and the needs of today. And today people are very lonely, anxious, depressed. That's common words, and we need to step into that space for people.
I love that. I so appreciate your comment about partnerships. We don't have to do everything. Sarah, would you like to give some thought to this too? Just a few moments. Your thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, trying not to reiterate what's already been said, but it does feel like the state of the world. I mean, after COVID, mental health wellness, I mean, it's always been important, but it feels more important now because of all the isolation that has caused and led to depression. People are more, I think, sad, like just hyper aware of what's going on around them, and nervous and anxious, like what's going to happen next. I think the COVID just threw everyone through a loop. We didn't really know what was going on. And so I think everyone now knows that there's something wrong. And I feel like for the Y, we do have all of the, I think, ability and the resources to pay really close attention to mental health wellness. If we maybe change some things, or maybe we don't do the same things we were doing pre-COVID, maybe our focus shifts a little bit more towards how to include mental health wellness in our gyms, in our kids programming, things like that. I think we're on the brink of something really good.
I love your ideas for adapting and just seeing how COVID made such a difference in mental health. Thank you so much. And Pamela, I'm going to give you the last word. What would you like to comment on regarding this?
So y'all feel free to use me as a resource if you are interested in rolling anything out at your associations. I'm happy to share what we've done. We have our teen mental health hub that we got some grant funding for, and we've got the campaign of Mental Health Has No Face. So we've got pictures of teens, with a hijab on, in a wheelchair, in a hoodie, with the basketball. And it's a website full of resources. We are open to sharing that. We started a partnership with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, where we are offering monthly events where NAMI puts them on. All we do is provide the space. And really, it's about sharing the resources, but also breaking up some old ideologies. So I'm going to step on some toes here. I was raised by a baby boomer, and she had some very specific ideas about work. You go to work early, you leave late, you have perfect attendance, you retire from the same job after 40, 50 years, you get your clock and you go home and die, right? But our millennials have shown us that that's no longer acceptable. They've come in and they've dictated new requirements and expectations, and we've had to meet those in order to get some staff, right? So we have leadership who have that old baby boomer mentality. And along with that is the I don't need a therapist concept, right? Because if I just work and keep my nose down and get my job done, I'll be fine. So we have to challenge ourselves and ask us, what's serving us? What is serving you? Is this ideology serving you? If it isn't, give yourself permission to move away from it and grow into something that is serving you.
Pamela, what great words to close on. So appreciate your wisdom on this topic. And each one of you, thank you, Janelle. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Sarah, for being with us today. And we are going to continue talking about this concept in the next few months. But I'm going to turn it now back over to Dory.
Thank you.